Coming. My name is Tyler Wilson. I'm a graduate of UMBC and I'm currently pursuing my master's in museum studies at Johns Hopkins. Over the past year, I worked with the Catoctin Furnace Historical Society to create a historic structures and cultural landscape report on the Carty-Miller property. I'll be sharing that with you today. To be clear, due to time restrictions, I will not be able to cover everything that the report covers, but you will be able to find it on the Catoctin Furnace website.
You want me to forward it to the next slide? Yep, okay.
All right, so some quick background on the property. In terms of its size, it's quite large. It's about 90 by 200 feet. It includes a 1.5 story dwelling that was built likely around 1820, which is when the last owner, when John Bryn purchased the Catoctin Furnace complex after the previous owner went bankrupt, and it functioned as a workers' home for furnace workers and their families until it ceased operations in 1903, after which the last owners, Lancelot Jock Sr. and Stanley E. Hauver, sold it to William Keller Carty, who purchased it in August 1923. He was actually a railroad conductor for the H&F trolley line, part of which ran through a hill that is directly behind a lot of the properties on the western side of Catoctin Furnace Road, which is the side that the Carty-Miller property is on. He married Carrie Blanche Sweeney, who was a member, naturally, of the Sweeney family, which included a number of workers who worked at the furnace. They had a daughter named Emma Josephine, who went by Josephine. Now moving on to the Miller family, who would come to own the property. They also included a number of Catoctin Furnace workers. Among them was Phil Miller, who worked at the furnace in his early adulthood before it closed down. He worked alongside his father, Charles, and after that, they went to work in Thermont. Later on in 1905, Charles Miller and 4 members of the Sweeney family would be killed in a ransom train wreck alongside 21 other people, unfortunately. And Phil Miller allegedly was actually the last person recovered from the wreckage, the last survivor. And he would go on to marry Catherine Sally Stitley, and they had 4 sons and 4 daughters at the house that was then next door to the Carty-Miller property at 12602. Now, one of their children, Clint Miller, who was their second son, married Josephine Carty, William Carty's daughter. And in February 1942, they purchased the Carty-Miller property from William. And there they had 3 children, Virginia, Beverly, and Joanne. And Joanne being my primary source for this whole project, and she was great to talk to. Yeah.
That's you.
Now onto the property itself. The dwelling, which is the largest structure on the property, has a white vinyl siding. Originally, it actually used a vertical wood board siding up until about 1957, after which it switched to German weatherboard siding until by 1982 it was replaced with the vinyl siding. The dwelling also includes a concrete porch and a small wooden rear deck. It also includes a breezeway, which you can't really tell from either of these photos, but it's there and it connects what is now the laundry room to the rest of the house, and that was added by Clint in the early 1960s. And lastly, the house's water supply comes from a well that was drilled in 1977. The next most significant, largest structure on the property is the garage. It's a rather short single-car garage that was only used for vehicle storage till around 1965, after which they decided to use it for more of a work shed. And Another interesting part of it is that inside there's a railroad tie staked to the floor, which was placed by Clint while Joanne was learning to drive so that she could not drive through the garage. Now, moving on, there's also 3 outbuildings that are at the very far end of the rear yard. They are from left to right, the chicken coop, the outhouse, and the hog pen. The chicken coop was still in use during Joanne's childhood. And she actually was apparently very often assigned to fetching eggs from there. The outhouse was actually originally much closer to the house, which you can see just barely in that photo. It was much closer because they didn't have a proper bathroom in the house. Now, around 1964, after they had a bathroom finished, it was moved farther there. The reason they kept one there is because Josephine did not want Clint coming in to use it while doing yard work because he was so dirty. Or he would get served doing so. And then the hog pen, that was last used when the Carty family still owned the property. And they actually would hold a community event every year around Thanksgiving time where people would gather around and they would butcher several of the hogs that they had there for everybody to eat. Now, with the broader yard itself, it has a lot. It contains a stone brick fireplace that was added in about 1963. There's a pile of stones that's in the far corner of the yard over there that compiles what was a paper burning pit. And otherwise, there are numerous flowers, trees, shrubbery, and decorations that have changed throughout the years, and there are simply too many to cover today. Now, one of the more significant and sort of pressing matters that revolves around the property is the ditch stream. So originally there was a ditch through which a stream flowed and it ran along a lot of the properties on this side of Catoctin Furnace Road. And it was around where that flower bed was, right behind the fireplace. And it went straight down north-south. In early 1963, Clint Miller and several of their neighbors to the north decided to bury the stream and lay iron pipe underneath it to create a culvert to continue the flow. And their neighbors to the south chose to just leave it uncovered for one reason or another. And another aspect of it that connects to it is a rusted creek, which is right about there next to the paper burn pit. Originally there was an underground pipe that connected to the culvert. Or in the early 21st century, Joanne actually had a separate pipe laid to go straight south from the grate so that it would just run straight into the ditch stream. Now, as many of you may know, if you know about Catoctin Furnace, there are various water-related problems, specifically relating to the Carty-Miller property. During the construction of Route 15, particularly the second phase, which happened in 1985, there was several issues caused specifically by the destruction of a spring water pipe that ran drinking water and just general water to several of the houses on the western side of Catoctin Furnace Road. And anyway.
Everybody's waiting up.
Fortunately, at that point, the Carty-Miller property wasn't affected because they had switched to, they actually weren't as significantly affected because they had drilled the well in 1977. Along with that, because Route 15 is on a steep slope that leads down into Catoctin Furnace, rainwater that flows down from there results in it worsens the already abundance of groundwater that is saturating the soil. There is a drainage system that was supposed to be in place. And it works to an extent, but it hasn't fully been affected. Otherwise, some other water problems that move farther back. There was an artesian well drilled at house 12616 in the early 1960s, sorry. And after that, water began to consistently flow down a ditch that runs in front of the front yards for many of the houses. And whenever that water flow would get clogged by debris, leaves, etc., that is believed to be connected to flooding in the Carty-Miller basement. And that was something that Clint Miller and later Joanne would have to consistently keep up with in order to prevent the basement from flooding. And now, lastly, the exit of the culvert that I previously mentioned in 2015 was covered by dirt in order for the neighbors to install a gray water system. And that halted the flow of the water, it allowed it to stagnate. And seeing as at that point, the iron pipe that was placed was already quite old, it is almost certainly corroded, which was allowing water to seep into the ground around the property. And so, some more recent improvements, because it's not all doom and gloom. In more recently, the exit of the stream culvert was uncovered, and instead there was a grate placed with a PVC basin and then a pipe leading away from it that allowed for the flow to continue. And from the looks of it, it seems to have been effective. And along with that, there has also been a single consistent flow created from the pipe that Joanne laid from the grate. Both of these things were done by the Roweens at the house next door to the Carty-Miller property, who have lived there since 2021. And I would like to commend them for that, because it seems to be quite helpful. And then moving into some suggestions that I concluded on in my report, I would say, of course, I would say that uncovering the ditch would be an ideal decision to make. It would make it easier to monitor, to ensure that it's clear. Either that, or it would be ideal to at least replace the iron piping with some non-corrosive materials such as PVC piping. Otherwise, it would be good to coordinate plans to ensure that the ditch running along the road that has been causing the flooding in the basement, it would be good to coordinate a plan to keep that clean. And also, as you can see from this photo, this tree, there's a large pine tree in the southwest corner of the yard, and it is planted on the slope of the trolley bed hill I was mentioning earlier, and it leans quite dramatically. I believe it would be a very good idea to monitor it and look out for any signs that it may fall over, because it would almost certainly fall into one of the neighboring properties. But yeah. And now a last thing that I'd like to go over, because I greatly enjoyed talking to Joanne and hearing her memories. So first of those was during her childhood, when the H&F trolley line still ran. She and her sister Beverly would open the kitchen window, turn off the lights, and wave out the window in hopes that their grandfather, William Carty, would see them, because he was a conductor for the line. And she actually likened it to television, because the family at that time didn't have them. Also, there was a sweet cherry tree up until 1953, And Joanne recalls that her mother would make cherry cobbler with the fruit from that. Another thing, when the ditch was still uncovered, so the stream was still open. One time while her family was about to leave for an event, Joanne fell into the ditch and ruined her outfit, which I believe we both think is quite humorous. And then lastly, while she was learning to drive, she accidentally scraped her father's car against this mimosa tree next to the driveway. Sorry, Joanne. Lastly, some final acknowledgements. First, Joanne Miller, first and foremost, for her incredible contributions, both through her oral history and through her photography, because she is a much better and more experienced photographer than I am. But honestly, I could not have done this without her, and it has been a pleasure to work with her. And also a thank you to Elizabeth Comer for giving me this opportunity, because I have enjoyed every moment of it. And that's about it. Thank you all for your time.